Lisa Grant pressed her face against the cold window of the transport ship and watched the massive space station grow larger. Nexus Prime looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness of space. Its long arms stretched out in all directions, each one bigger than any city she had ever seen back on Earth. "First time seeing the Academy?" asked Jake Morrison, the boy sitting next to her. He was also from Earth, also human, also nervous about what was waiting for them. Lisa nodded. She could not find words. For 19 years, she had lived on a small farming planet where the biggest building was the grain storage tower. Now she was looking at a place that held over 2 million beings from 12 different species. The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Lisa grabbed her small bag and followed the other new students through the airlock. The moment she stepped inside Nexus Prime, she felt tiny. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it. Strange creatures walked past her in every direction. Some looked like giant insects walking on 2 legs. Others seemed to be made of pure light. A few looked almost human but had blue skin and extra arms. "Welcome to Galactic Defense Academy," said a voice that sounded like grinding rocks. Lisa looked up and saw her first Saurian. Commander Zethkar stood over 8 feet tall. His green skin looked like armor, and his yellow eyes stared down at the group of new students. "You are here because your species believes you have potential. I will decide if they are correct." Lisa felt her stomach twist into knots. Back home, she had been the smartest student in her school. Her teachers said she had a gift for seeing patterns and solving puzzles. But standing here, surrounded by beings who could travel between stars before humans even learned to make fire, she felt stupid and small. "Follow me," Commander Zethkar said. His voice carried no warmth. "I will show you where you will likely fail." The group walked through halls that seemed to go on forever. Other students passed by, all older, all looking confident. Lisa saw a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, speaking to what appeared to be a walking tree. Neither of them looked at the new arrivals. They stopped at a large room filled with glowing screens and floating platforms. "This is a basic combat simulation room," the commander explained. "Even our youngest students can handle these exercises. Let us see what Earth's finest can do." One by one, the new students climbed onto the platforms. The simulations created fake enemy ships that the students had to destroy using light-based weapons. Most of the alien students performed well. Their reactions were fast. Their aim was perfect. The human students struggled more, but several still managed to hit their targets. Lisa went last. She stepped onto the platform and felt it start to move beneath her feet. Enemy ships appeared all around her, moving in complex patterns. She raised the weapon and tried to aim, but the ships moved too fast. She fired again and again, missing every time. The simulation ended with all enemy ships intact and Lisa standing in the middle, sweating and embarrassed. Commander Zethkar made a note on his tablet. "Interesting," he said, but his tone suggested it was interesting in a bad way. "Next we'll test your ability to process tactical information." The tactical test was worse. Students sat at stations and had to plan battle strategies using holographic star maps. They needed to move fleets of ships to defend planets from enemy attacks. Lisa stared at the display, trying to understand the symbols and numbers. The other students finished their plans quickly. Lisa barely managed to move 3 ships before time ran out. "Humans," she heard one of the insect-like students whisper to another. "I heard they still fight with metal weapons on their home planet." "Primitive," agreed the other. "I do not understand why they were admitted to the academy." Lisa felt her cheeks burn with shame. She wanted to explain that humans had advanced quickly, that they had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. But she knew it would sound like making excuses. The worst part came during the group discussion exercise. Commander Zethkar presented a battle scenario and asked students to suggest solutions. The alien students raised their hands immediately, offering complex strategies involving technologies Lisa had never heard of. What about quantum displacement of the enemy fleet? Suggested Veltora, a being made of shifting blue energy who was clearly the top student. We could use hive mind coordination to overwhelm their defenses, added Grixmoth, one of the insect creatures. When Lessa finally raised her hand, Commander Zethkar looked surprised. Yes, Cadet Grant? What if we study their previous attacks first? Lisa asked quietly. To see if there are patterns in how they fight? The room went silent. Several students exchanged glances. Commander Zethkar's expression did not change, but Lisa could tell he was not impressed. Cadet Grant, he said slowly, we are training military officers, not historians. Real battles require quick thinking and advanced tactics, not reading old reports. But if we understand how they think, Lisa started. The enemy does not think, Grixmouth interrupted. They are a mindless swarm. There is nothing to understand. Lisa wanted to argue, but she could see that everyone in the room thought she was wrong. She lowered her hand and said nothing more for the rest of the class. That evening, Lisa sat alone in the student dining hall. Jake found her there, picking at food that tasted like nothing she had ever eaten. Rough first day? He asked. Sitting down across from her, Lisa nodded. I think they made a mistake bringing me here. Everyone else seems to know things I have never even heard of. You will get better, Jake said, but he did not sound completely sure. We both will. Lisa looked around the dining hall. Students from different species sat in groups, talking and laughing. She noticed that humans sat mostly by themselves, and even then, there were only 12 of them in the entire academy. She was not just the worst student in her class. She was probably the worst human student in the academy. Maybe, she said, to Jake, but deep inside, she was already starting to wonder if there was something the teachers and other students were missing. The way they talked about the enemy, calling them a mindless swarm, did not feel right to her. Nothing in nature was truly mindless. Everything had patterns, even if those patterns were hard to see. But for now, she was just Lisa Grant, the human girl who could not hit a target or plan a battle. The girl everyone ignored because she asked the wrong questions. She had no idea that asking the wrong questions would eventually save the galaxy. 3 weeks passed at the academy, and Lisa's grades did not improve. She failed every combat simulation. Her tactical planning scores were the lowest in the class. During physical training, she could barely keep up with the alien students who had natural advantages like extra limbs or enhanced strength, but something else was happening. While other students spent their evenings in the recreation areas, Lisa found herself drawn to the Academy's massive archives. The library contained millions of battle reports, strategy documents, and historical records from across the galaxy. You spend too much time in there, Jake told her one evening as she prepared to head to the archives again. You should come hang out with the other human students. We are watching movies from Earth. Lisa shook her head. I need to understand something. Jake looked concerned. Understand what? Lisa, you are obsessing over this stuff. Maybe you should talk to one of the counselors. But Lisa could not explain what she was looking for because she was not sure herself. She just knew that something about the way everyone talked about the Void Swarm felt wrong. They called it mindless, random, impossible to predict. But Lisa had grown up on a farm. She knew that even the simplest creatures followed patterns. Night after night, she read through battle reports. The Void Swarm had been attacking Alliance worlds for over 50 years. Everyone described their attacks as chaotic and unpredictable. But as Lisa read more reports, she started to notice things that others had missed. The attacks were not random. They happened in sequences. The swarm would hit 3 or 4 planets in a specific region, then disappear for months. When they returned, they would attack a completely different area. Most people saw this as proof that the swarm had no plan. But Lisa saw something else. She started making charts and maps, plotting every attack over the past 5 decades. She worked late into the night, her eyes burning from staring at data screens. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The swarm was not attacking randomly. They were following mathematical sequences, like a complex equation written across space and time. Cadet Grant, Commander Zethkar, said during a tactical exercise 2 weeks later, "You seem distracted. Perhaps you should focus on the lesson instead of whatever fantasy you are pursuing in the archives." Lisa felt her cheeks burn. She had not realized that anyone knew about her research. "I was just trying to learn more about our enemies, sir." "The enemies you should be learning about are right here." The commander pointed to the holographic display showing the current exercise. "These simulations are based on real void swarm tactics. Master these, and you might actually pass a test." Lisa looked at the display. The simulated enemy ships moved in what appeared to be chaotic patterns, just like in all the other exercises. But now, after weeks of studying real battle reports, she could see that the movements were not chaotic at all. They followed the same mathematical principles she had found in the historical data. She raised her hand. "Sir, what if we tried approaching from the Cadet Grant?" Commander Zethkar interrupted. "You have failed every simulation this semester. Perhaps you should listen instead of offering suggestions." The other students laughed quietly. Veltora, the energy being who always scored highest, spoke up. "The simulation parameters are perfect, Commander. They accurately represent void swarm unpredictability." "Exactly," agreed Grigsmith. "Random patterns cannot be predicted or countered. That is why we focus on overwhelming force and superior technology." Lisa wanted to argue, but she had learned that speaking up only made things worse. She returned to her charts that night, more determined than ever to prove what she was seeing. The breakthrough came during a fleet exercise in the 6th week. The Academy's advanced students were running a large-scale simulation, commanding entire battle groups against void swarm forces. Lisa watched from the observation deck with the other junior students. The simulated human fleet attacked the swarm using standard alliance tactics. They formed defensive formations and tried to predict where the enemy would strike next. But the swarm ships moved in seemingly random directions, striking where the fleet was weakest. Lisa watched the patterns of movement and felt her heart start to race. She pulled out her tablet and began calculating. The swarm ships were following the same mathematical sequence she had identified in battles from 30 years ago. If her theory was correct, she could predict exactly where they would attack next. She watched the simulation continue. The swarm ships moved exactly as her calculations predicted. Then they moved again, following the next step in the sequence. Lisa's hands shook as she realized what she was seeing. The void swarm was not chaotic. They were following complex mathematical patterns that repeated across decades. But the patterns were so large and spread out over such long periods that no one had seen them before. After the simulation ended, Lisa tried to approach Commander Zethkar. "Sir, I think I found something important about the void swarm patterns." The commander barely looked at her. "Cadet Grant, the swarm has no patterns. That is basic military knowledge. Focus on passing your regular assignments before you worry about advanced theory." Lisa tried again the next day, and the day after that. Each time, she was dismissed or ignored. Her teachers saw her as the failing human student who spent too much time reading instead of training. They had no interest in her theories. Meanwhile, her regular performance continued to suffer. She failed another combat simulation so badly that Commander Zethkar suggested she consider dropping out of the academy. "Perhaps military service is not suitable for all humans," he said after class. "There is no shame in admitting your limitations." That night, Lisa sat alone in the archives, surrounded by data screens and star charts. Jake found her there after midnight. "Lisa, this has to stop," he said, sitting down beside her. "You are killing yourself with this research. And for what? No one cares about your theories." Lisa looked up from her calculations. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but they also burned with determination. "Jake, what if I told you I could predict the next major void swarm attack?" Jake stared at her. "What do you mean?" Lisa turned her screen toward him. It showed a complex map of Alliance space with mathematical equations overlaid on star systems. The swarm follows patterns. Big patterns that take decades to complete. And according to my calculations, they are about to start a new cycle. A big one. Jake looked at the screen, then at Lisa. "You are scaring me. This looks like the work of someone who has lost touch with reality." "Look at the data," Lisa insisted. "Look at the proof." But Jake was already backing away. "Lisa, please. Talk to a counselor. Get some help." After he left, Lisa sat alone with her discovery. She had found something that could change everything, something that could save millions of lives. But she was just a failing student that everyone ignored. Who would listen to the human girl who could not even pass a basic combat simulation? She did not know that very soon the galaxy would have no choice but to listen. The alarm started screaming at 4 in the morning. Lisa woke up in her small room as red lights flashed and the emergency announcement echoed through the station. "All students report to emergency stations. This is not a drill." Repeat, "This is not a drill." Lisa grabbed her uniform and ran into the hallway. Other students were rushing in all directions, their faces filled with panic and confusion. She found Jake near the main assembly area. "What is happening?" she asked. Jake's face was pale. "Void Swarm Fleet. Massive one. They appeared at the edge of Alliance space about an hour ago. They are heading straight for the core worlds." Lisa felt her stomach drop. According to her calculations, the next major attack was not supposed to happen for another 3 months. But as she thought about it more, she realized her mistake. She had been calculating based on incomplete data. The pattern was starting earlier than she had predicted. In the main briefing hall, Admiral Kruyalen stood before hundreds of students and instructors. The bird-like alien's feathers were ruffled with stress. "The situation is critical," she announced. "A void swarm fleet of unprecedented size has entered Alliance space. All Academy resources are being mobilized to support the defense effort." Behind the Admiral, a massive holographic display showed the approaching enemy fleet. Lisa stared at the formation and felt her heart race. The ships were arranged in exactly the pattern her research had predicted. They were following the mathematical sequence she had identified. "All advanced students will be assigned to support vessels," Admiral Kruyalen continued. "Junior students will assist with logistics and communications. We are facing the largest swarm attack in 50 years. Lisa raised her hand. Several students around her looked surprised. Everyone knew she never spoke up in large meetings. Admiral Kruyalen noticed her raised hand. "Yes, Cadet Grant?" "Admiral, I have been studying void swarm attack patterns. I believe I can predict their strategy." The hall went silent. Then, quietly, students began to laugh. Commander Zethkar stepped forward, his expression angry. "Admiral, Cadet Grant is a failing student who has been spending her time in the archives instead of attending to her studies. She has no relevant expertise." Lisa felt her face burn with embarrassment, but she forced herself to continue. "Please, Admiral, I have mathematical proof that the swarm follows predictable patterns. I can show you where they will attack next." Admiral. Creallen looked uncertain. Cadet Grant, we have our best tactical minds working on this problem. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but they are going to attack the Centauri system first. Lisa interrupted, her voice growing stronger. Then they will split their fleet and hit both the Vega colonies and the Europa station simultaneously. It is all part of a mathematical sequence. Commander Zethkar stepped closer to Lisa. That is enough. You are disrupting a critical briefing. With fantasy theories, return to your quarters. But I can prove it, Lisa said desperately. Give me 5 minutes to show you the data. Guards, Commander Zethkar called. Escort Cadet Grant to her quarters. She is clearly not fit for duty during this emergency. As security personnel approached her, Lisa made a decision that would change everything. She could not let millions of people die because nobody would listen to her. She pulled out her tablet and activated a program she had been working on for weeks. I am sorry, she said quietly, then pressed a button. Every screen in the briefing hall suddenly changed. Instead of showing the approaching Void Swarm fleet, they now displayed Lisa's research. Mathematical equations filled the displays, along with star charts showing 50 years of attack patterns. What is happening? Admiral Creallen demanded. Lisa had hacked into the Academy's main computer system. The Void Swarm is not random, she said loudly, her voice carrying across the silent hall. They follow mathematical patterns. Look at the data. Every attack for the past 50 years fits into a complex sequence. Commander Zethkar was furious. This is sabotage. Arrest her immediately. But Admiral Creallen held up a wing to stop the guards. Her ancient eyes were studying the displays. Continue, Cadet Grant. Lisa felt a surge of hope. The patterns repeat every 17 years, but each cycle is bigger than the last. The swarm is not trying to destroy us randomly. They are following a plan that spans decades. She manipulated the display to show her predictions. Based on their formation and approach vector, they will attack Centauri first. The attack will last exactly 6 hours. Then they will divide their fleet and strike Vega and Europa simultaneously. Veltora, the energy being who always scored highest in tactics class, spoke up. This is impossible. The swarm has no intelligence. They are a force of nature, like a hurricane. Look at the evidence, Lisa said, pointing to the screens. Their movements are too precise to be random. Every attack follows the same mathematical principles. The same sequences repeated across space and time. Grixmoth made a sound of disgust. Numbers mean nothing. The swarm cannot be predicted because they do not think. Lisa turned to face the assembled students and instructors. What if we are wrong? What if they do think, but they think in ways we do not understand? Before anyone could respond, a communication officer ran into the hall. Admiral, urgent message from Fleet Command. The swarm has just attacked the Centauri system. The hall erupted in shocked voices. Admiral Creallen stared at Lisa, then at the displays showing her predictions. When did they attack? 17 minutes ago, Admiral. Lisa looked at her tablet. According to my calculations, the attack should last exactly 6 hours. Then they will move to Vega and Europa. Commander Zethkar was no longer angry. He looked confused and worried. Even if she predicted one attack, that proves nothing. It could be coincidence. Admiral, the communication officer interrupted again. Fleet Command is requesting all available tactical analysis. Our forces at Centauri are taking heavy losses. The enemy formation is unlike anything we have seen before. Lisa studied the incoming battle reports on her tablet. The Void Swarm was using exactly the tactics her research had predicted. Admiral, our fleet is walking into a trap. The swarm wants them to form defensive positions around the main planets. But that is exactly where they will strike hardest. Admiral Creallen looked at the battle reports then at Lisa's predictions. What do you recommend, Cadet Grant? Lisa could hardly believe she was being asked for advice. Tell the fleet to avoid the obvious defensive positions. The swarm expects them to protect the planets directly. Instead, they should form mobile groups and attack the enemy supply lines. Commander Zethkar shook his head. Admiral, you cannot seriously be considering tactical advice from a failing student. The failing student who just predicted the enemies. First move, Admiral Krelin replied. She opened a communication channel to Fleet Command. This is Admiral Krelin. I am transmitting unconventional tactical recommendations. They come from an analyst who has successfully predicted enemy behavior. As the Admiral transmitted Lisa's suggestions, more reports came in from Centauri. The Alliance fleet was being destroyed exactly as Lisa had warned. Traditional defensive tactics were failing completely. Admiral, Lisa said quietly, in 4 hours and 23 minutes, the swarm will split their fleet. Half will go to Vega, half to Europa. But that is not the real attack. Everyone in the hall stared at her. What do you mean? Admiral Krelin asked. Lisa's hands shook as she manipulated the display to show her most disturbing discovery. The attacks on Centauri, Vega, and Europa are just preparation. The real target is Earth. The swarm is drawing our fleets away from our home system. In 18 hours, when our defenses are weakest, they will attack the human homeworld with their entire remaining force. The silence in the hall was complete. Then Commander Zethkar spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. If you are wrong about this, billions will die because we followed the theories of a failed cadet. Lisa met his gaze. If I am right, and you ignore me, billions will die anyway. Admiral Krelin looked at the data, then at Lisa, then at the reports still coming in from the failing defense at Centauri. Everything Lisa had predicted was coming true. Guards, the Admiral said finally. Place Cadet Grant under arrest for hacking Academy systems. Lisa's heart sank. After everything, they still would not listen. However, Admiral Krelin continued, she will be held in the command center where she can assist with tactical analysis. It appears we have much to learn from our most unusual student. As security escorted Lisa toward the command center, she heard Commander Zethkar speaking quietly to another instructor. 50 years of military doctrine, and a human child sees. What we all missed. Lisa did not feel like a child anymore. She felt like someone carrying the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. And she knew the hardest part was still to come. The command center of Nexus Prime had never seen such chaos. Officers from 12 different species shouted orders at each other, while holographic displays showed the disaster unfolding across Alliance space. The Void Swarm had attacked exactly as Lisa predicted. Centauri was lost. Vega and Europa were under assault. Millions were already dead. Lisa sat at a small console under guard, but Admiral Krelin had given her access to all incoming battle reports. Every few minutes, another confirmation of her predictions arrived. The swarm was following the mathematical patterns she had identified. Fleet Command reports total loss at Centauri, announced a communications officer. Vega colonies are evacuating. Europa stations are requesting immediate reinforcement. Commander Zethkar approached Lisa's station. His usual confidence was gone. Cadet Grant, your prediction about the timeline. How certain are you? Lisa checked her calculations again. The attacks on Vega and Europa will end in 3 hours. Then the swarm will regroup and head for Earth. They will arrive in 14 hours. And you believe this is all part of some greater plan? Lisa nodded. The swarm has been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Every previous attack was practice. They were learning how we fight, how we think, how we respond to threats. Veltora floated nearby. her energy form flickering with what looked like distress. But why Earth? It is not the most important alliance world. Why would they target the human homeworld? Lisa had been wondering the same thing. I think it is because we are the newest members of the alliance. We are different from the other species. Maybe they see us as a threat to their plans. Admiral Krialan joined the group around Lisa's console. Or maybe they see humans as the weakest link. Destroy Earth, and the alliance loses its most unpredictable members. Unpredictable, Lisa repeated, and her eyes widened. That is it. They are not afraid of our technology or our numbers. They are afraid of our unpredictability. She turned to her console and began pulling up new data. Look at every major alliance victory against the swarm. In every case, human forces were involved. Not because humans are stronger or smarter, but because we do things differently. Commander Zethkar studied the data. Human tactics are often considered primitive by alliance standards. Exactly, Lisa said, her excitement growing. The swarm can predict alliance tactics because they follow logical patterns. But human tactics often ignore logic. We improvise. We take risks that make no sense mathematically. Admiral Krialan was beginning to understand. So the swarm sees humanity as a variable they cannot calculate. Lisa nodded. And the only way to remove a variable from an equation is to eliminate it entirely. A new alarm sounded. The communications officer looked up from his station with horror. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting movement in the outer system. The main swarm fleet is changing course. They are heading directly for Earth. The room fell silent. Lisa's worst prediction was coming true. How long do we have? Admiral Krialan asked. 13 hours until they reach Earth's orbit, the officer replied. Commander Zethkar turned to Lisa. What would you do? If you were in command of Earth's defenses, how would you stop them? Lisa stared at the tactical display showing the approaching swarm fleet. It was 3 times larger than the forces that had destroyed Centauri. Earth's defenses would last minutes, not hours. We cannot stop them with force, she said quietly. They have been planning this attack for decades. They know exactly how our fleets will respond. Then what do you suggest? Admiral Krialan asked. Lisa took a deep breath. The idea forming in her mind was so strange that part of her was afraid to say it out loud. What if we do not fight them at all? The room erupted in angry voices. Gricksmith buzzed furiously. Surrender is not an option. The swarm shows no mercy. Not surrender, Lisa said, raising her voice to be heard. Communication. The voices stopped. Everyone stared at her. Communication, she repeated. What if the swarm has been trying to communicate with us all along? What if their attacks are not random violence, but attempts at making contact? Commander Zethkar looked skeptical. Cadet Grant, the swarm has killed millions of Alliance citizens. How could that be communication? Lisa turned back to her console and began displaying her research. Look at the mathematical patterns again. They are too complex and precise to be simple attack strategies. What if they are messages? She manipulated the display to show the attack sequences over 50 years. Each attack follows specific mathematical rules. The timing, the targets, the formations. It all fits together like a language. Veltora moved closer to the display. A language based on warfare and destruction? Maybe that is the only language they know, Lisa said. What if the swarm is a species that thinks differently than any of us? What if violence is how they express complex ideas? Admiral Krialan studied the patterns on the screen. What would they be trying to say? Lisa had been thinking about this question for hours. I think they are trying to warn us. Every attack has been aimed at military targets or border worlds. They have avoided populated civilian areas when they could. What if they are trying to tell us about a bigger threat? What kind of threat? Admiral Creolan asked. Lisa pulled up star charts, showing the areas beyond Alliance space. The swarm comes from outside our galaxy. What if something out there is so dangerous that the swarm is trying to prepare us to fight it? What if their attacks have been training exercises? The idea was so strange that nobody spoke for several minutes. Finally, Commander Zethkar broke the silence. How could we possibly test this theory? We try to talk to them, Lisa said. When they reach Earth, instead of attacking, we broadcast mathematical sequences back at them. We try to respond to their message. Grixmoth made a sound of disbelief. Risk the entire human species on the theory that genocidal aliens are trying to help us? Risk the entire alliance on the assumption that they are mindless destroyers, Lisa replied. Because if we fight them conventionally, we will lose. Every battle proves that. Admiral Creolan looked around the command center at the displays, showing Alliance defeats across 3 star systems. Our current strategy is clearly failing. She opened a communication channel to Earth's defense forces. This is Admiral Creolan at Nexus Prime. I am transmitting an unconventional contact. Protocol. Do not engage the approaching swarm fleet. Instead, broadcast the attached mathematical sequences on all frequencies. Admiral, came the shocked reply from Earth. Are you ordering us not to defend ourselves? I am ordering you to try something. That might actually work, Admiral Creolan replied. Trust me. As the hours passed, everyone in the command center watched the displays showing the swarm fleet approaching Earth. Lisa worked frantically to refine the mathematical messages they would broadcast. She used the same patterns she had identified in swarm attacks, hoping they would be recognized as responses rather than threats. When the swarm fleet reached Earth's orbit, they stopped. For the first time in 50 years of conflict, void swarm. Ships held position without attacking. Earth's defense forces broadcast Lisa's mathematical sequences. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the swarm ships began to respond. They moved in formation, creating patterns that matched the mathematical language Lisa had identified. They are responding, Admiral Creolan said in amazement. They are actually communicating. Over the next hour, a conversation developed between Earth and the swarm fleet. Using mathematical patterns, the swarm revealed their true message. They were refugees from a galaxy destroyed by an entity they called the Devourers. The swarm had been trying to warn the Alliance and prepare them for an invasion that was still coming. Their attacks had not been attempts at conquest. They had been desperate attempts to force the Alliance to develop better defenses and new strategies. The swarm had been testing Alliance responses, trying to teach them how to fight an enemy that consumed entire galaxies. When the truth was finally understood, the swarm ships withdrew from Earth's orbit. But they left behind a final message. The Devourers were only 3 years away, and the Alliance needed to prepare for a war unlike anything they had ever imagined. In the command center of Nexus Prime, Admiral Creolan looked at Lisa with something approaching awe. Cadet Grant, you have not only saved Earth, you have given the Alliance its first real hope of survival. Lisa felt exhausted but proud. Admiral, I think we need to change how the Academy teaches strategy. If we are going to face the Devourers, we cannot rely on traditional thinking. Admiral Creolan nodded. I am promoting you to strategic advisor and placing you in charge of developing new training protocols. The Academy needs to learn how to think like humans. Commander Zethkar approached Lisa and offered what might have been a smile on his reptilian face. It appears there is value in asking the wrong questions. Lisa smiled back. Sometimes the wrong questions are the only ones worth asking. As news of the successful first contact spread throughout the Alliance, Lisa realized that her time of being ignored was over. The Academy was broken, its rigid thinking shattered by the need to prepare for an unimaginable threat. and it would be rebuilt with human adaptability and unconventional thinking at its core, the galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most important discoveries come from the people everyone overlooks.